Hi, good morning. Good morning, everyone. I hope you have had a good week. Chaotic, volatile, but a good week. And I hope you have watched my last week's YouTube video, because today will be part 2. It will be very connected to what I said last Saturday. And if you have forgotten what it is, I would strongly, very strongly recommend that you view it again. Not just you yourself, but please share with your friends, your family, because what I'm going to present to you today is even more frightening than what I've said in part 1. It's even more frightening than MAGA and Great Depression. And I'm very sure, very sure, that a huge majority of you, if not almost all of you, have not heard about this movement that I'm going to talk about in today's YouTube video. All right? And you have to link Project 2025 with MAGA, with Trump's latest trade policy, and how Trump and his far-right team is going to collapse the current world order and remake a new world order. I think you would know, those of you who have followed me, you will know that my views are all based on research, deep research, wide research. It's not something that I just pluck out from the thin air. And I've been looking at this for quite some time. The more I look at it, the more frightening I get. And in a later video, in another session, I will also share with you, amidst this very pessimistic, very dark analysis, the conclusion that we have reached, we see one possible, I wouldn't say salvation, but one possible savior to this extremely scary scenario. Okay, maybe let's start. So last week I talked about how Trump's MAGA slogan goes beyond reviving US manufacturing, and it's got sinister objectives. The MAGA movement believes that America has lost her former greatness due to foreign influence, immigration, globalization, and the movement seeks to restore true America First policies, emphasizing economic protectionism, strict immigration controls, and traditional Christian values. As I explained last week, Trump's core objective with MAGA and Project 2025 is to rebuild America into a conservative nation dominated by the American males, the whites, and the Christians. So I'll continue with this, and I'll focus on Trump's tariff policy and the broader agenda behind his economic nationalism. I introduced a new term for you today. It's a bit hard, I find it a bit hard to pronounce. It comes from the word acceleration. This concept, this movement is called accelerationism. Please pay attention to this. I'm sure before you listen to me today, I'm sure all of you have not heard about it, or even if you had, you did not pay much attention to it. But this is the thing that scares me the most. Now this is, I hope you can see, the full list of President Trump's so-called reciprocal tariffs. The 2nd of April, where he declared Liberation Day, which actually turned out to be a day of carnage throughout the world. And it's about 90 odd countries, and you can see at the top is China. And of course, since then, since 2nd of April, things have changed rapidly. The tariff imposed on China now is 245%, according to a fact sheet from the White House. And of course, you know Malaysia is 24%. And some countries, Vietnam, Malaysia, Japan, have gone to Washington to negotiate. I have to say negotiate within quotation mark, because I can be almost certain that it is a lopsided, one-sided negotiation, even with countries like Japan and South Korea. Elon Musk called Peter Navarro, who is the chief architect of Trump's crazy tariff policy, as a moron. But is he really a moron? Look carefully. Navarro wrote a document featured in Project 2025, which revived the same paranoid narrative, portraying China as a communist economic supervillain and America as a righteous victim of Chinese and global exploitation. He will brand in his chapter in Project 2025 China as communist, while he doesn't describe Vietnam as communist. So what do we have? Is to manipulate public perception and wage an ideological propaganda war disguised as trade policy. Trump's tariffs are not reciprocal. They are erratic, they are retaliatory, designed with one purpose in mind: to force other countries to submit to America's pursuit of supremacy rather than being reciprocal. And you know, this reciprocal, the negotiation under this reciprocal tariff is on a bilateral basis, America and the other country. America knows that if you do it on a bilateral basis, America can literally bully every country that they're negotiating with. So that is why Navarro and Trump and the current Trump administration is so anti-WTO. Because in the case of WTO, the small countries like Singapore and Sri Lanka and so on can group together and be able to negotiate and bargain on better terms. But when you're on a bilateral basis, you are really at the mercy of a merciless US president. The chart I show you now, on the left-hand side is the Smoot-Hawley Act, which I referred to a few times before, of 1930, just before the recession morphed into a Great Depression. On your right-hand side, which is not really updated, not really up to date, but you can see at the highest level, it is already, even based on 2nd April announcement, the America's weighted average tariff rate is already higher than 1930. And since April the 2nd, there have been more and more tariffs. So what we are doing, what America is doing, what Trump is doing, is to apply a 19th century era tariff rationale to today's service-dominated US economy. It is like demanding horse and buggy lanes on a highway. Because, as I explained before, tariffs in early 19th century, in the middle of 19th century of America, was justified. America was facing trade deficit at that time, America was a developing economy, and America was competing against Britain and the European powers. But now, the situation is completely different. Trump keeps saying, our country has been looted, pillaged, raped, and plundered by nations near and far. That is, I'm not sure where he got it from, I'm not sure where he plugged it from, but like the editorial in China Daily says, it is actually the other way around. America basically has lived, the people in America has basically lived beyond their means. And globalization has actually, instead of exploiting America, has actually benefited the American economy. And another crucial thing, Trump and Navarro have both very intentionally left out the fact that America actually runs consistent surpluses in services. The McDonald's, the Marriott Hotel, the Hollywood, the software licensing, all this, America has services surpluses with almost every economy, including China. You know, research from almost every economist has shown that tariffs primarily burden American consumers and businesses. I think it's a given. It's so commonsensical, right? That Trump's tariffs will damage his own American economy. Now, there are already signs, even before the tariffs are fully implemented, there are already signs that the US economy is entering a recession. The chart I'm showing you is the Consumer Sentiment Index from University of Michigan. It has plunged, this is the latest in April, it has plunged to levels that in the past have been associated with US recession, either shallow or deep recession. And based on the same University of Michigan survey, inflation expectations of US consumers have surged. This is expected change in price during the next 12 months. They have skyrocketed to a level that has even surpassed the level in the 2020 pandemic. This is the next 12 months. Over the next 5 years, inflation expectation of American consumers have also skyrocketed. So it's no wonder that Fed Chair Jerome Powell is so worried about rising prices and falling GDP. The US bond yields have risen, which is a bit worrying because it rose after the reciprocal tariffs were announced. Now, when stock markets plunge in America, usually the bond yields of the US Treasury securities will go down because they are seen as haven assets. Now this time, after Liberation Day, US bond yields went up by 60, 70, 80 basis points. This is showing you that foreign investors are running away from America. As you can see on your right hand side, that's the spike in the bond yield. Now, America likes to tell you that China needs America more than America needs China. But if you look at the facts, they are totally different. Of course, whatever China exports to America is more than what America buys from China. So superficially, like Treasury Secretary Besson says, China has got only, using a gaming analogy, he says that China has cards of tools. That means the cards in China's hands are very weak. China has got no bargaining power at all. And since 2nd April, Trump has imposed more and more tariffs and trade restrictions on China. including imposing fees on Chinese-built ships. And the 90-day tariff suspension announced on 9 April is causing even more uncertainty. This is because America has announced that they're going to probe into semiconductor, electronic imports, and I can be very sure there'll be new tariffs after that. There's this projection, long-term projection, by two professors from Victoria University in Australia. Let's look on the right-hand side. The impact after the pause period is over. So this is not a projection for the next 12 months, the next 18 months. This is a projection that goes up to 2040. Right? You look at the last column, average 2025 to 2040, real GDP, the pre-pause impact is minus 2.1. The impact post-pause is minus 1.6. That's a long time for an economy to be contracting. Of course, the trade war with China is the end of globalization, right? And it will make America worse off because of this imbalance, major imbalance in key imports. But Trump, he still knows all this, and they actually want it to be this way. Just as an aside, consumers in Canada and Denmark are already boycotting American products. And of course, it can potentially lead to similar retaliations in other countries. This is a video that you must watch. It is a speech given by Singapore's Prime Minister Lawrence Wong recently in the Singapore's Parliament. He's talking about a very complex subject. He's talking about a very serious problem, but PM Lawrence Wong was able to put it in very simple, logical terms. Listen to his speech for yourself. The key takeaway is that Lawrence Wong said protectionism is already bad. But with Trump's protectionism, it is unstable protectionism, and that is even worse. I have never heard a Singapore Prime Minister that is so blunt and that is obviously upset with what America is doing, not just to Singapore, but to the entire economy, entire global economy. Of course, the chaos creates uncertainty upon uncertainty, instability upon instability. Which company is going to invest? I'm going to invest 100 million, 500 million. My assumptions are this. 1 month later, America changes the policy. Then what happens to my investment? So, commonsensically, businesses, entrepreneurs are going to wait. And when they wait, the economic growth will suffer. Everywhere, anywhere in the world. Now, you will notice that China has very justifiably and understandably responded to Trump's extreme tariff. China has, of course, in self-defense, retaliated. So why is Donald Trump and his far-right team refusing to negotiate with China? Oh, they keep saying, waiting for China to call, waiting for China to call. China has said 1,000,000 times, you have it mutual respect, based on peaceful coexistence, on a win-win solution. I will negotiate with you anytime. Donald Trump, Peter Navarro, they don't like the word win-win. They don't like the word mutual respect. They hate the word peaceful coexistence. But why is Trump so keen to win Putin over to the side of the Western world? My clue? Think Project 2025, think MAGA, and I vote for you, think accelerationism. Trump's chaos, tariff or non-tariff, let me share with you, is intended, it is intentional, and they are aligned with the Project 2025 plan. Kevin Roberts, Heritage Foundation's president. Heritage Foundation is the platform, is the group that organized and produced Project 2025. Kevin Roberts says, America is in the midst of a second American Revolution, which will remain bloodless if the left allows it to be. Now here the left is not referring to the left that you normally know. It's talking about the left in America, which could refer to Bernie Sanders, which could refer to Joe Biden or whoever it is. Roberts identifies himself as an insurrectionist who is open to violence and predict that this America's second revolution will be completed by 2050, and it is tied to a great awakening that Kevin Roberts believes will bring America back to God, to Christian God. He has said it very clearly in his foreword in the Project 2025 1,000-page manual. The next conservative president, this was written in 2024, was published in 2024, the next conservative US president must end the left's social experimentation with the military, the DEI, restore war fighting as its sole mission, and set defeating the threat of the Chinese Communist Party at its highest priority. The tone, the message is very apocalyptic. Roberts declared economic engagement should be ended, not just rethought. Ended, decouple, stop, full stop. According to Heritage Foundation, the stakes for America could not be higher. The conservatives in America have only 2 years and only one chance to get this right. With enemies at home and abroad, there is no margin of error. According to him, time is running short. If we fail, the fight for the very idea of America may be lost. Accelerate, accelerate. Right? So, Heritage Foundation was not so aggressive in the past until Kevin Roberts came in. So this Project 2025 is pushing extreme economic policies like full disengagement from China and other nationalist agenda. Again, I ask you, I beg you to think accelerationism. The members of the people who contributed to Project 2025, many of them are now currently serving in the Trump version 2 administration. This is extracts from chapter 26. Chapter 26 of Project 2025 concerns trade. So half of the chapter is written by Peter Navarro. His part is the case for fair trade. If you look at Project 2025 in the original version, the word fair is not in quotation mark. I put for you in quotation mark fair, because fair in this part of the chapter is defined unilaterally by Peter Navarro. So he wrote, these instruments of communist Chinese trade aggression include high tariffs and non-tariff barriers, currency manipulation, a heavy reliance on sweatshop labor. Sweatshop labor? Does he know that a fresh graduate STEM engineer in Shanghai costs more than a STEM engineer in Malaysia or elsewhere. Sweatshop labor, pollution havens, oh my God. I'm sure Peter Navarro is talking about a different country, a different planet. Because if he could go to the tier 3, tier 4 cities in China, he would see for himself that these not so advanced cities in China are environmental paradise. The dumping of unfairly subsidized exports. Come on, if China can heavily subsidize, China, a poor developing country, can heavily subsidize America, you got so much money, you can subsidize, can't you? Widespread counterfeiting and piracy. Communist China is the world's largest source of counterfeit and pirated products. If that is true, then America must be the largest source of bigoted jingoistic propaganda. Anyway, it should be clear from this review, this is quoting Navarro, from this review that Communist China's economic aggression is both widespread and systemic. CCP's self-proclaimed goal is to supplant the US as the world's dominant economic and military superpower. I wish people like him reads more of Xi Jinping's publication and his thoughts. So he says the next American president should strongly consider adopting all of the proposals that he put, which ran to about 4 pages as a package, which Trump has done. Trump has been in the White House for less than 100 days, and he has implemented almost all the recommendations that this racist Navarro has recommended. Those, we can see the bullet points, it's all part of the proposal that he has made. I mean, you can read it for yourself. The book, you can go to Project 2025, it's available online for free. You can download the whole 1,000 page and go to chapter 26. I won't run through with you because when I read them, I feel like vomiting. So anyway, he wrote the part on fair trade. Chapter 26 has got a second part, which is written by another person. It is called Advocate for Free Trade. In that second part, China is never referred to as Communist China. In this second part of chapter 26, China is consistently referred to as China. And this is the part talking about free trade. So, Mr. Navarro, my question, I have never met you, I do not know who you are. My simple question, why do you hate China and the Chinese people so much? This is the trade war version 2, right? Every time America attacks, China defends. Continue. I do not know. China now has imposed 125% tariff on American products. China has already said, look, after this, I'm not going to increase the tariff anymore because it's stupid, it's meaningless, it's a joke. Because nobody's going to buy your products anyway at that price. Anyway, we'll see what happens then. So, Xi Jinping has always said there are no winners in the trade war. Whether it's a trade war, whether it's a tariff war, there are just no winners, as world history has shown time and time again.
Are you tired of doing investment research on stock markets? Want to spend time on your hobbies or go out with your friends instead? Introducing iCapital, where you can get independent, objective, and comprehensive investment advice on the go. Available in English and Mandarin and can be accessed via app, website, and print copy. We provide thorough, first-hand research-based findings on listed companies, economies, and stock markets. and clear perspective of how markets interact and how they influence investments, as well as provide Malaysian and global stock recommendations, stock portfolios with outstanding performance to follow. Subscribe now to iCapital for stock news. From only 49 ringgit a year, start investing like a fund manager. Subscribe now at www.icapital.biz.
Trump's trade policy is driven by Christian nationalism rather than economic strategy. It aims to dismantle global trade systems. Like I said, the WTO allows the small countries, the small economies, to bargain with a giant like America on a stronger footing. If America negotiate with, well, even Malaysia, Indonesia, what can we do? We just submit to whatever America wants, right? Now, as part of Project 2025, as part of Trump making the United States mainly male, white, and Christian, as part of Trump's trade policy, destroying China is a key component of MAGA, right? And that's why why America wants to decouple from China. Why America knows that this tariff is going to create a lot of economic difficulties. Look, if you're not trying to destroy the world trading system, why are you imposing tariffs on islands that has got only 700 people with more penguins than people? Why do you impose such high tariffs on Falkland Islands? You are imposing tariffs on literally the entire world, except for, I think, Russia and Serbia. What are you trying to do? Anyway, the Director General of WTO says that this Trump tariff war is going to create a major economic disruption. She says her greatest fear is that the economies of China and the US decouple from one another. Okay, you look at the last line. In this scenario where US and China completely decouple, global GDP could shrink by 7% in the long run. 7% is so significant that's almost as near as a depression. In a decoupling, WTO estimates that the merchandise trade between America and US will plunge by 81%. Gosh. And all of this initiated by Peter Navarro and Trump. For what objectives? Let's listen to Professor Jeffrey Sachs, well-known professor from Columbia University. He was in India in a summit called Rising Bharat. And it's incredible. I mean, this guy is one true American who really will tell you honestly what is wrong with his country. And by the way, for those of you who are not familiar, Rising Bharat, Bharat actually is India, right? How did India come about? The name India came about because of British colonialism when Britain colonized India. In the past, India was known as Bharat. It was, I think, was either a Sanskrit or Hindi word. So Prime Minister Modi has been trying to make the word Bharat popular again. So anyway, in this summit, Jeffrey Sachs says, America voted for Donald Trump under a constitution and a rule of law, not to be ruled by executive decrees, which in any event is illegal under America's system of government. So what America is in now is whether a president can just declare emergency after emergency, even though these situations have no relevance as emergency. So what Jeffrey Sachs says is now that we are profoundly destabilized in United States because we have a one-person rule. Well, I mean, he didn't want to say basically a dictator, you know. And he says we do not know whether there will be any reaction to this, whether the courts will be, the US courts will be able to enforce a judgment that these actions are illegal, or whether the Congress will take any action. Because under the US Constitution, according to Jeffrey Sachs, it says very clearly that the right to levy duties and tariffs belongs only to the US Congress, not the US President. I don't think Professor Sachs got it wrong. He's a brilliant professor and he is very smart, very wise. So things have already happening at a rapid pace. This is the mother of a 20-year-old US citizen, right, who actually has got an American birth certificate, is being held and charged illegally for entering Florida as an unauthorized alien. My God, I got a US birth certificate, I'm a US citizen. This map shows you the number of universities in America where their international students have gotten their student visa revoked. Carnegie Mellon is one, more than 500 students have, this is outdated, there's been more than 500. This is a Russian researcher at Harvard Medical School. She did not declare a set of frog embryos when she was coming back to US from France. And instead of getting a fine, her visa was revoked and she's now in the detention center. The lady in the white in the middle, this is a group of guys who just arrested the lady in the white in the middle. She is a doctoral student from Turkey. And as she was walking home, she was grabbed by the people from Immigration and Customs. And now she's in detention. This guy is a Columbia University student, same thing. He has been deported because he is a national security risk, because he participated in pro-Palestinian demonstrations in Columbia University. It's not just students, because in the world of Trump, green energy is also against national interests. Green renewable energy is anti-America. So imagine offshore, major, huge offshore wind project has been cancelled, even though the project is under construction. Top university, the oldest university in America, Harvard, well, got this treatment from Trump. His government froze $2.2 billion in grant to Harvard University over campus activism. And Trump also threatened Harvard University to revoke their tax-exempt status. It's not just Harvard. It's Cornell, it's Princeton, it's Columbia, it's Northwestern, and so on and so forth. The cultural revolution in America doesn't stop there. It's a lot more than that. I don't have the time to give you all. Anyway, there's this act called the Safeguard American Voter Eligibility Act, SAFE Act, where it looks like the act would make voting by a certain group a lot harder. What it does is this. The act requires individuals to present passports, birth certificates, or other citizenship documents just to register or to update your voting status. Now, what is wrong? Because there are 69 million American women and 4 million American men that do not have documents matching their current names, current legal names, thanks to marriage, assimilation, or gender transition. You're talking about 70 over million people. Finally, the conclusion that I want you all to understand comes from the word accelerationism. What is it? What began as a reciprocal response to foreign trade practices has now become a Trojan horse for something more sinister than Trump's economic agenda. His tariff rampage conveniently bypassed Russia. Coincidence? I don't think so. Is Russia spared because Trump sees Russia as a white, potentially Christian ally against yellow-skinned China? Right? You destroy China, then Trump's America would have everyone at his merciless mercy. You know, I mentioned to you his Project 2025, his MAGA, is very entwined with Christian nationalism. Russia, in Trump's eyes, is a potential partner in a world war of values against secular liberalism, multiculturalism, and most importantly, against China. If nations like Poland, Romania, Lithuania, and more could be transformed from communist regimes into torchbearers of Western values, Western religiosity, Russia can also be rebranded. Don't forget, Russia will not be around forever, you know. So, this is what it means. Fueled by the perception that the future of the white race is bleak, these white supremacists believe that they must employ any means necessary to expedite the collapse of the current system. Solutions to bring down the current system range from the most extreme form, violence, to deliberate political engagement that supports destructive and divisive societal elements, so that once the current system has been destroyed, collapsed, then they come in, they rebuild, and they dominate. So the accelerationists believe that the current system is beyond repair and must be brought down by whatever means, right? And in this case of the trade policy, it is seen as patriotism. Recently, a man in America declared to be a man who declared dedicated to white supremacist beliefs is facing federal charges in alleged plot to use explosive-laden drone to blow up an energy facility in Nashville in furtherance of his accelerationist ideology, according to the court document. The extremist expert Jan Berger says these accelerationist ideas can be found across all political spectrum, but this ideology is the most popular now in right-wing and white supremacist circles. In 2023, there were actually 13 physical attacks against power facilities in America, with 25 attacks in 2022. I'm sure you didn't know about this until you listened to this video. That is scary. It's like somebody blows up the Naga's major power facility, and then we are out of power for what, 1 week, 1 month. So the Nashville authority arrested the guy Skylar Philippi, right, after he unknowingly collaborated with 2 undercover agents while plotting to carry out an attack on an electrical substation near Nashville. February the 3rd in Baltimore, same thing, arrested this political movement leader Brandon Russell and Sarah Beth for allegedly plotting to destroy an energy facility outside of Baltimore. 2022 in Colorado Springs, Anderson Lee Aldrich opened fire inside an LGBTQ bar, killing 5 and injuring 19. According to the testimony, Aldrich administered a website that hosted footage live streamed by Brenton Tarrant. Brenton Tarrant, if you remember, the massacre in Christchurch in New Zealand many years ago, where he also professed to be part of this movement. In Slovakia, the same thing. This was in 2022. In Raleigh, North Carolina, same thing. In 2021, these people conspired to damage an energy facility. This is the one, 2019, Brenton Tarrant, right? The shooting resulted in 51 people dying. In a manifesto released shortly before his attack, Brenton Tarrant had a section titled Destabilization and Accelerationism, Tactics for Victory, in which he writes that white supremacists must destabilize and discomfort society wherever possible. So he is serving life prison without parole. I've just given you some samples. You can look it up for yourself. But as you do it, please get more and more frightened, because I'm not talking about a fairy tale. So Trump's tariffs are part of a broader ideological crusade led by the Heritage Foundation and, of course, by the Trump administration and the MAGA forces to destroy China. Why China? Because China is the only credible country that can counter American exceptionalism, because China's existence challenges the chaotic nationalist vision of a divinely ordained world order. China is the only country that can do all this. So if you destroy China, the rest of the world is at your feet, is submissive to you. In 2024, in the Conservative Political Action Conference, the vendors openly sold prints of Donald Trump with Jesus Christ. And the photo on the right hand side is the latest, where it shows a photo of Trump, bloodied, where it was taken during the assassination attempt last year. There are reports, I'm not sure, in social media you can get all kinds of things, that Trump will declare martial law. World War I and the 1929 Great Depression played significant roles in the rise of Adolf Hitler and the outbreak of the Second World War. The trajectory from Project 2025 to MAGA to Trump's tariffs raises questions about the consequences. What are the consequences that will follow for the whole world? So unless someone stops the acceleration, we may soon find out what a collapse born again looks like. I pray that doesn't happen. And as I said, the only country that is able to stop this acceleration is China. But China cannot do it alone. China needs many countries, needs the rest of the world to be able to stand up to this movement in America that is going to be very, very destructive. I hope you understand what I'm saying, because it is not easy. It's taken me quite a lot of effort to do the research, to be able to link so many different things together. I hope I'm wrong. I hope that I'm completely wrong. But what if I'm correct? What if my research and my analysis about this accelerationism comes true? Are you prepared for it? Again, like I said, I hope that other countries, I wish that other countries would stand up like what China did and group together with China. Then when you have the whole world, or a majority of the countries in the world taking the same stance, that look, America, you cannot do this to the entire planet, then we will have a positive future. As always, please give your comments. And as I mentioned to you all again and again, because our videos are different. Our videos are not just about investment, it's about messages, important messages for our community, for our society. The more people know about it, the better the future will be for all of us. Like I said, I'm sure most of you have not heard of acceleration or understand what the consequences are. So with this, I hope you can see Trump's tariff strategy a lot more clearly. It doesn't matter to him that if his tariff bring the whole entire global economy into recession. If that is so, it's even better. And if you like what I do, if you like what my videos are, subscribe to Capital Dynamics YouTube channel. Or, because what I presented to you is just a summary, in our publication iCapital, we give you even more analysis, even more research. Subscribe to www.icapital.biz. It makes a lot of difference to your future. With that, I hope you have a working weekend so that you're prepared next week when the working week starts again. Bye-bye.